Greetings, good people, and welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Beloved and Kindred. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Grace Gipson, Assistant Professor of African American Studies at Virginia Commonwealth University.
And I'm Dr. Kanika Robinson, a visiting assistant professor of Africana Studies at the University of Pittsburgh. So today we will be talking about the film See You Yesterday. I'm very excited about this film. Actually, I just saw this week. Apparently, Dr. Gipson saw this many years before, no worries. But it's really a good film and it has so many meanings that we will be discussing today. And so first, I want to start with the opening and the setting, the classroom scene. And the fact that the biggest points was the fact that you see Black students, Black youth in this film as the leading characters. They're the main people who are a part of the plot line. A lot of times you don't really see movies based on kids with a lot of meaning. And so this was a great movie for that. And we see these different experiences, the Black experience through the eyes of children. So.
Yeah. And we got to make sure we let them know it takes place in the Bronx, specifically, New York widely, but in the Bronx, New York. So definitely got to make sure we put that on the map because cities are characters just as much as the people are.
Yes, that is very critical. And also, before we can go into the scene again, I do want you all to know that it is a 40 Acres and a Mule film work production, which is what Spike Lee's company. And so I'm very excited about that too. So going to the themes of it, the classroom scene at the beginning. First of all, we have Michael J. Fox, who was from Back to the Future as the teacher in this classroom. Mm-hmm. And what was he reading?
Kindred, good old Kindred. That's the graphic novel there, but he was reading the original novel from Octavia Butler. So huge shout out right there. Gotta love that.
Yes.
Also, you had CJ, who was one of the main characters, who was reading a Stephen Hawking's book. And then you had Sebastian, his friend, with another group of folks in the classroom who were reading a comic book called Black from Kwanzaa Osayefo. And so this, like I said, was a comic book. So you have all these different type of mediums that are happening in this one scene, from comic books to sci-fi books to, fantasy and magic realism, all in this one scene, opening scene. So I thought that was like super amazing and like really gets our attention right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. Because even at this moment, you start to see that, okay, Black youth as not just, again, one thing we talk about is depicting Black people in unique and nuanced ways and not just this one stereotypical way. And so you see Black youth who are very intelligent reading these different types of works, from the comic book to Stephen Hawking's book. And it was very, to me, again, just like with you, was interesting because of the fact that we see they're already in STEM fields.
Exactly.
And so even at the beginning, we hear Michael J. Fox, I can't remember his character, the teacher saying he wanted Claudine, or is it Claudette?
Claudette. Mm-hmm.
Claudette and Sebastian to participate in the expo. It was like the STEM related expo. And one of the questions he asked, which I think is very important, is why do you want to participate in this expo?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like why? Like what do you want to do? And it wasn't in a bad way. It was encouraging the way the question was put. And she was like, I want a scholarship to MIT. Like this is about scholarship.
A full ride scholarship to MIT.
A full ride. And I was like, okay, tell him where you want to be. Mm-hmm. And it was very interesting because I was like, looking at her future.
Exactly.
She's like, I'm doing this for my future. Like, this is why I do this. Exactly. And even Sebastian, he went away to get something from the lab.
Right. You can tell there's some plots going on here, like this conversation that CJ is having with the teacher. It's intentional, but at the same time, it's like, okay, I need to allow some time for Sebastian to take care of some business as well, because we need some things before we leave here. So,
and that was good. That was like a good time, a placeholder, because then when Sebastian came, he was like, all right, enjoy life, wish you well. Exactly. And Sebastian was like, And he said, if you need help with college applications, just let me know. They're like, great. We just really needed that thing from the lab, but we got this. But thank you. We appreciate everything you can do for us.
Yeah.
And another thing that after that scene, oh, go ahead. Did you want to add something?
I'm just going to add that the other school that CJ was mentioning, how she wanted to get a full ride to MIT and Sebastian was wanting to go to Morehouse. And so, you know, got to shout out the AUC and the fact that, you know, that's made mention. We know that's intentional. Thank you, Spike.
Oh, that's intentional. Okay.
But we appreciate, you know, putting that on the map there.
Yeah, and you know, we see that again, that one lady who had that Spelman shirt on.
Yep.
So AUC specifically, those HBCUs were represented in this film. But again, we know it's intentional, Spike Lee. So we can't forget that. One thing I want to point out is after they left, there was another friend they ran into. And the other friend liked CJ.
Right.
And CJ was like, move. I'm trying to get my things together with this time travel machine that me and Sebastian is trying to do. And I appreciated that because her life was just not about a love interest.
Right.
She was like, I just need to get what I need to get done. I'm trying to go to MIT. I'm trying to get a full ride. I'm trying to get this time travel machine off the ground. I don't have any time for you. No disrespect.
Yes.
But I need to focus on my goals.
Yeah.
And that
take care of business.
Right. And that is very unique too, because even in usual narratives about Black women or Black girls, it's always, you know, finding a love interest. Not always, but, you know, a lot of times it's about finding love interest, you know, getting married and enjoying your life. So, yeah.
And so, yeah, and I really also like the fact that we had CJ and Sebastian having this, what is that? The word is slipping me. But their friendship, you could tell, was like true and genuine. It was a brother-sister type of relationship. I'm gonna look out for you, you know, a colleague type of thing. Like, I respect you in your work. You know, I help you, you help me. You know, it was definitely truly not only a friendship, but a familial type of relationship that they had. And I respected the fact that they didn't just have them as a love interest either.
Right.
You have two kids who are just like being kids. They're youth, they're teenagers. And so give them the opportunity to be kids and not necessarily push them to being adults so fast. And so I think that's really important that we have those kind of stories as well, allowing kids to be kids. Something I see when I'm looking at comics is that, you know, there's so much adult content that kids can't really begin to, you know, grow into who they are. They have to just like quickly become an adult super fast. And so See You Yesterday definitely is giving us like that teenager vibe. We're definitely feeling like we're back in high school again.
Yes. And that's a great point because, you know, usually when you think of Black youth, especially in the media, and especially in regards to criminal justice and things of that nature, Black youth are considered grown. Like they're treated as adults. They're depicted as adults. In this film, even throughout the film and how things are happening, it happens from the eyes of a child, from the eyes of a teenager specifically. And so even when things happen, you're like, but, you know, she's a teen and she's allowed to, you know, be a teen. The same with Sebastian. He's allowed to be a teen and they're curious and they have this curiosity. So, yeah, I do appreciate that.
So, and going back to what you were saying with what the teacher was asking them about why they wanted to go to the expo, you know, this kind of taps into this idea of the future. Also in like, you know, does the future really matter? And, you know, more so about the past. So once again, here we are going back into the past, trying to deal with that versus the future.
That's true.
So, and then he kind of follows up with another question, said, so if you had that kind of power, what would you do and what would you change? So it's like, you want to be able to time travel, but what are you going to do with this power? What are you going to do with this ability? Which is a really good question, because it's like, we want to do these great, amazing things, but what do we want to do with it once we have it or once we get the power?
You know, just kind of stay away from the movie. You know how a lot of people ask, like, if you can go back in the past, what would you do?
Yeah.
Like, what would you change? Would you go back to the past if you had that power? And my answer is always no. Like,
so I go back and forth between, do I want to go back and change things? And so I do believe things happen for a reason, but sometimes I'm like, well, maybe if I had a slight change, a slight deviation, maybe things could be a little bit different. So depending on the day, you ask me whether I want to go back in time or whether I want to go into the future and see
That's
what's
true.
ahead. So
That's true. I don't know. That's very interesting. That's a question we're going to revisit because especially after this film, I'm more confirmed in my answer. I'm like, bet I was right. And so, like, one of the things that they do, they build this time travel machine.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time it didn't work out, and then next thing you know, they tried again and it worked. They're very excited. They went back in time. And of course, when they went back, they met the one thing about going back in time. Now, again, I have never done this. So this is based on Back to the Future and other things I've read. You're not supposed to change anything.
Yep.
You're supposed to go back and just, go around yourself pretty much, like, and go around things that are happening. So clearly, in her youthfulness, she did not do that. Even though Sebastian was like, stop, she was like, one thing, I just need to do one thing. And that kind of messed up the future slightly. Mm-hmm. So then at that point, she realized her power as being able to do things in the past and change the future.
Yeah, it's like, as eager and excited as we are to go back to the past, and I like that Sebastian is the voice of reason. He's like, so you can't see your former self because
right.
It messes everything up. That will throw everything off. And CJ's like, yeah, I got it. I'm gonna be good. We're good. Yes. And it's like deep inside, she's telling him that, but she's like, but there's an opportunity right here. So
right.
that speaks to
mm-hmm.
kids being kids,
right.
And that speaks to us being curious about things, not even just kids, but just people in general being curious about what they can change. And when you have the power and the ability to make a move towards something else, you kind of like, do you take the apple? Do you not take the apple?
Right.
So, yeah, it was, seeing that moment of them going back and it working, mm-hmm. There's this excitement because it's like, yes, they got it to work. But then at the same time, I'm like, what's going to happen next after this? Now that you didn't fix the kinks and everything.
Right. Because at this time, when she went back and changed everything, that guy who was aggressive toward her at the beginning, he was hit by a car. Mm-hmm. He survived. He had a broken arm. But that wasn't enough to stop them because, again, it goes back to what you were saying about curiosity.
Right.
And then tragedy happens mm-hmm. after that. So a convenience store was robbed. And the convenience store was robbed by two Black people. Mm-hmm. Her brother, Calvin, and Calvin's friend
yes,
were walking from a July 4th.
An important date to remember here.
An important date, because July 4th is what? Independence Day. We'll talk about that in 2.3 seconds. So as they were walking, the two people who robbed the convenience store ran past them. Mm-hmm. We're like, what's going on? Very innocent. And next thing you know, a cop car come behind them, and two police officers get out. And eventually Calvin was killed mm-hmm. because he pulled something out of his pocket. At that time, we weren't sure what it was. Did they say it was, they didn't say what it was at first.
Right. So we see another very similar incident to like Amadou Diallo. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so at this point again, Calvin is shot and killed. And before this, we already see in their house, there was a media talking about protests, Black Lives Matter, things of that nature going on. So the media has already been talking about police brutality.
Tensions are high.
Mm-hmm. Right. So it's already, there. And so when he is killed, the conversation, then there's a march on his behalf.
Right.
But going back to July 4th, it's important because this is Independence Day.
Right.
This is
not our Independence Day.
Because who said it wasn't our Independence Day?
That would be Frederick Douglass.
Sure would, wouldn't it?
So what is the Negro? What is the 4th of July to the Negro? Yeah. So it was odd. I remember watching it again because I've watched it on several occasions, as Dr. Roberts has mentioned. I failed to tell.
It failed to tell me, yes.
My students are typically required to watch this film. And so I remember, watching it, and I think it didn't click to me like the day that Calvin got killed was on the 4th of July. Mm-hmm. How ironic is that right. This was supposed to be a day of independence and his life is taken. Right. And so, yeah, it was just, that immediately stuck out to me like, okay, what did Frederick Douglass tell us about this? How do I feel about the 4th of July? Like the fact that these were two innocent young black men who were just minding their business. And yeah, so, and life had to be interrupted.
Exactly. They were literally, like you said, just minding their business, just walking. And it really kind of ties back to, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it, our last episode with Whitey's on the Moon, where we're concerned about independence for who, right? Yet, our lives are being threatened every day.
Exactly.
And so it was a very powerful scene, just like you discussed. It was a very powerful scene. And when he dies, of course, his sister, Claudette, CJ, is very emotional. And even Sebastian, because Sebastian is like a brother.
Right.
We get to find that out a little bit later. There were several things that happened around that time that was very interesting, especially in regards to Black women and the role of Black women in the community. So there was a scene where Claudette is sitting on the bed and, she's emotional. Clearly she lost her brother. At the same time, TV is playing about the protests. So it's a very interesting interplay because even though, she's seeing everyone marching on behalf of her brother and other people who have lost their lives to police brutality, she's experiencing this trauma.
Right.
And, not really knowing what to do.
Exactly.
Then her mother comes in. And her mother said a very important statement. She was like, if I could change the past, I would. If I could fix it, or something like that, fix the past, whatever, I would, but I can't.
Right. And I think that's the trigger. That becomes the trigger moment for the rest of the film, going forward. So, the fact that she mentions that she would change the past if she could. Right. Also, the fact that you have this mother who is trying to comfort her child, who, later, like, she doesn't need to be watching this at this moment. Like, she needs to, mourn in a different type of way. So we're seeing different levels of mourning here as well. We're seeing a mother comforting her child. We see the spark, the match that's lit for CJ to continue maybe finding purpose in her work. So if we go back to the question that her teacher poses to her about the expo, it's like, okay, yes, I want to get this scholarship to MIT, but now I also want my brother back. So, there's some kind of purpose now that is being lit under a fire, is lit under her to, change the wrongs.
Right. Definitely. And it goes back to, I work as scholar activists.
Yes.
Like, we are doing research, and yes, it's part of the academy, but also our work is to help our community.
Exactly.
To help our people. So it's more than just, hey, we're just going to do research just to, advance in the academy. It's like, no, we have to have purpose behind this. Right. And that even is important to the field of African American studies. It's like in Africana studies, social responsibility is key in addition to academic excellence. Yep. So even this conversation about, just like you said, I want to go to MIT, but at this point, MIT is not the concern.
Right. No. Now it's like my community.
Yes.
What can I do? What part do I play in my community and changing the community, which ultimately change society, to change the world.
Right.
So speaking of community helpers and community workers, Sebastian and CJ, I like to think of them as the community tech support.
Yes, I forgot. Yes.
Being that this movie is a STEM movie in so many different ways, there is a moment where CJ and Sebastian are working on whatever new project it is, worth the time travel.
Right.
And two people come to the garage and are like, it's like very code-like, very secret-like, using code words, different language, all of that. And, they asked this question about, basically getting some things fixed. And I loved how there was terminology of like, so you want the juice, you want pulp, no pulp. And for a minute, I was like, pulp, no pulp.
I'm thinking orange juice.
Orange juice, like, but what are you talking about? And then you see, oh, they have a language here. They have created a dialogue, some code. Right. And it was about them fixing a phone, fixing a laptop.
Yeah. He was like, I just want a battery.
I want a new battery, that's all.
I don't know the rest of the code. I stopped short. I didn't study the book. And she was like, I just want the laptop from my mom or aunt, whatever she wanted.
The fact that these kids can come to the neighborhood and it's kids creating the cure for this broken technology. They're fixing things. It's they have to go to Best Buy. They got their own folks who maybe don't have the luxury or the privilege or can afford to come to their neighborhood tech support and get that taken care of.
That is true. And it reminds me of what Dr. Sarita Davis in the Department of African American Studies at Georgia State University said to us one day, how she loved how Black people create our own language.
Right.
Like our own communication. Even if you think historically in Ebonics and things of that nature, how even at this moment, they create their own language.
Exactly.
And it really shows the survival and the intelligence of the Black community. So yes, that was very creative. That was funny too.
It's an initiative. Like, you know what? We have a talent, we have a skill. Let's use it and use it for our community,
Exactly. And then even when she was like, I'm going to give you a discount because I know her.
Right.
I was like, that is yes. Like, exactly. And then the other guy was like, well, can I get the family discount? Like,
I don't know you.
Like, I don't know. Y'all just met you like today. You didn't even know the rest of the code. So that was very interesting. And again, it really shows how the youth have been leaders or are leaders in our community.
Exactly.
And how we look to them for, innovation and, newness. So that was very good.
Yep. What else we see? Some small little pieces that we see. So we definitely are seeing a lot of representation of the diaspora. We see, the Guyanese flag that's on top of the garage. We see one of the people who's being recognized in the news was from Haiti. So we see flags from Haiti. We see a lot of the candles there. We see the connection to Jamaica. So there's a lot of the Caribbean diaspora that is really honed in, and it's very clear. It's very present. You don't have to guess. It's not an afterthought. And I love how it's like blended into the community. So we're definitely seeing that as another aspect of the diaspora that's on display.
Which is, again, it was, like you said, a very important point because it really shows how unified we are.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And, how all of our goals are aimed toward helping everyone, for helping everyone of the African diaspora. And even going back to that scene with Claudette on the bed with her mom, and her mom gets up and goes to the doorway, you see the grandmother of Sebastian, they're saying, I'm here for you. We're here. And of course it has like different meanings, but even that whole understanding of, people from different cultures are like, we still have your back.
Exactly. That community love.
That community love. And we're like, don't forget, Sebastian is your brother.
Yep.
Never forget that. So again, it's about these relationships that are being built and created at this time for support. And it really shows how, we do rally around each other to help each other.
Right, right. Oh, and so in that whole sister brother familiar love, there is a moment where Sebastian and CJ kind of have like a little moment, and they kind of come together and realize, and CJ tells him, I love you, Black man. And Sebastian replies with, I love you, Black woman. And like the way you just like that hit my soul, because it was like, oh my gosh, okay, like you all really, you're there for each other.
You really are.
It touched in a way that showed that they have feelings, they have emotions, they can emote, and it was really touching, and I appreciated them being vulnerable.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Vulnerability is key. Because even like you said, that argument was like, it was a love argument.
It was
like, because CJ wants to go back in time to change what happened to her brother at this point. Mm-hmm. And she's like, let's use the time travel machine. Let's do this. We will stop it. Right. And Sebastian is like, no, like what? Like, we're not doing this. Like, what are you talking about? This is not what we're doing. This is crazy. And she's like, you don't understand because you didn't lose your brother. And then he was like, but I feel like you're family too.
Yeah.
So I lost family, and it was just all love. And before we even get to that part, you remember when they were at the gravesite and the expo came up and they missed it.
Yep.
So at this point, you see the shift from forward thinking to going to the past.
Right.
Where, you know, starts, let's go back and change things. So, you know, at one point she was like, I want to, you know, I have a great future ahead. I'm looking at these different things. I'm going to MIT. I'm getting a full ride. I'm going to do great at Expo because I know I'm going to be great. I have a time travel machine. Exactly. Now it's like, okay, we have to go back and change the past.
Right. What else? Oh, as we've talked about in the last episode when we're talking about Lovecraft, you know, we always got to talk about joy. Joy is, even in the midst of pain and trauma, we got to celebrate the Black joy. Mm-hmm. And once again, we definitely see expressions of that in See You Yesterday. The block party, the barbecue, you know, playing dominoes, the different types of domino games. I didn't realize there was the old school way and a new school way.
I do believe that that's the case. I have never learned dominoes, but I know there's a spirit behind, a transgenerational spirit, or not necessarily transgenerational, because it does not pass down.
No, it's not.
I apologize, but it's a generational difference between playing dominoes. I said I'm not going to learn that. Yeah. So it's like spades, and so it really speaks to the different ways in which, you know, we find joy at these moments. And, you know, like you said, the block party and barbecue is key.
Yeah.
Barbecue is key. You have to cook. We can't be hungry and experience joy. It doesn't make no sense.
Even if we don't celebrate the 4th of July, we do have the barbecue. We have to have that. That is part of our celebration, our own way of, you know, having fun in that moment, in that day.
And also, it's just the time off work.
Yeah.
That we all have. So that's the, you know, misunderstanding. Like, oh, well, why are you doing this if you're celebrating? No, everyone's off.
Yeah.
So
it is a day off work.
It's a day off work. So, and we know everyone's off work. It's a national holiday. So we're going to barbecue, and it's summer.
Right.
So we're going to have a big party at a park or something. So yeah, that was very cool.
We'll have those juices. What was those name? Those jug juices that you have to have. I cannot think of the name of.
Like those hugs.
Yeah, they're like hugs. Huggies. Yes. Yeah. So you gotta have those. The blue flavor, the red. You know, all that. Like, that's just key.
Really, only those 2 flavors.
And if we notice, like, it doesn't matter if you're Black, you're from the Caribbean, wherever. Like, everybody still has those. It's like a universal.
Right. It's so work. It's like I want to buy some. But yeah, like it was delicious. It was great. It was wonderful when you're in the heat in the South, and also apparently in New York somewhere. I don't really know what heat is like up here, but, you know, it was really good. It was really interesting. So I really like that. And once they go, the first time they go back, well, the second time they go back for, the first time they go back for Calvin.
Correct.
That's when we lose Sebastian.
Right. Because this is in the moment where CJ is so excited and she wants to change things, and it's like, wait, and get a loss. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right.
But again, just like we said, she's young, you know, and also there's no precedent set for someone going back in time.
There isn't.
So there's no wise elder to say, when you go back, you should do this. And so,
because nobody believes you can go back. So there is no precedent.
Right. So she's like, except Sebastian, who's like, everybody come down.
Yeah.
And she goes to the store, and eventually the time kind of folds on each other. Not necessarily folds on each other, but you see the Sebastian of that time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He is shot, not accidentally, but he was shot in the midst of that robbery that, you know, eventually led to the death of Calvin. So Calvin survives, but Sebastian doesn't.
Right. So even in the trying to maintain or bring back one life, you lose another. And
right.
So, you know, this goes back to, like, we can't, you know, so it kind of goes back to that question of, like, do I really want to go back in the past to change things? Because I might make something worse than it already, you know, was.
Right.
So, like I said, that's why you like catch me on the day, whether I want to go back in time or whether I don't. So.
And if you choose to go back in time, you're watching this movie.
Yeah.
So See the movie. So that was very interesting. And so she has to go back in time again. So again, at this point, it's not about the future. It's about let's keep going back to recreate the past to start over.
Mm-hmm.
And during this time, Calvin is alive, but he's like, something's off.
Yeah.
Am I supposed to be here?
Right.
Like, and then she did leave his obituary.
So there's little things that are like affecting the travel here. There are lots of things that are, they say, changing the present, and not necessarily in the best way. I won't say good way, but in the best way. So it's like these are little small details that you have to remember, that if you change this, when we go back, this is what it's going to be. And so you got to applaud the ambition.
Yes.
Then, it's just a matter of like, how can we hone in that ambition? How can we, because I'm not going to use the word tame, but how can we, reshape? How can we mold so that we can get something that is workable?
Right. You're right about that. It's not about taming. It's about
these are kids that are working in a field that they're not already present in. Mm-hmm. So we don't want to discourage. We don't want them to feel like they're an outsider, because they're not. And
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And even at this point, you do see how 2 Black men are killed. Like no one else is killed. It's 2 Black men. So you have Calvin killed first, then Sebastian being killed. Yeah. And keep in mind, Sebastian's mother and father died. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Calvin and Claudette's or CJ's father was killed.
Right.
And so now you see
there's generational trauma.
It's like generational trauma that they're dealing with. And it's very interesting because even as these men are being killed or dying or surviving or coming back, like Calvin, she is still trying to make it work by herself. She's like, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to try to survive. And it goes back to that conversation with the grandmother and the mother when they even said the simple statement, "We are here."
Right. We
are here. We are here in this moment. Let's recognize this moment. We are here.
And why do you think that CJ feels like she has to do this alone? Like, is it something that is kind of like ingrained in us? Is it something that Black women and Black girls feel that it is necessary that they have to fix things, and sometimes they feel like they have to fix it by themselves? Like, why do you think like we deal with that?
Right. I don't have any definite answers, but it's almost like we're raised to be. Mm-hmm. The whole conversation about the strong Black woman. And we always say the strong Black woman is dead. Yep. So we have done so much for this community, we still do. There's nothing wrong with that, but we give so much of ourselves.
Right.
And we're taught to give a lot of ourselves. Mm-hmm. If you are a woman, for example, who are like a Black woman who says, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to be a protester. I don't want to cook in the kitchen. I don't want to do this. You're deemed lazy. If you focus too much on yourself, if you're like, I am focused on myself, I want to do better, then you become selfish. Mm-hmm. And so we are taught as Black women to always give ourselves and give of ourselves. And sometimes we give of ourselves so much, we lose ourselves. Right. And so even when you think about CJ, she lost herself to the past.
Exactly. Because she was so pressed.
Right.
Her brother.
So then she was so pressed to save Sebastian, which she should have. She needed to save Sebastian. That was. Yeah. And then, even when Sebastian was killed, how the grandmother had a nervous breakdown.
Right.
Because, yes, the grandfather was there and he was loving and everything, but the grandmother was so invested, just like the grandfather. Mm-hmm. But it's like you have these women carrying everything. Everything is on their shoulders, just like the mother, even though she's dealing with the death of, her husband, mm-hmm. and then now the death of her son, she's still trying to carry the world.
Right.
So what do you think? Why do you think it's Black women feel the need to?
I think we have been, since the creation of woman, like we have birthed, civilization. We have been the carriers, mm-hmm. We feed, we protect in a different, way than how it is seen that men do the protecting, but, we nurture,
right.
this level of warmth. And so that's almost expected of us to, and so that carries on. And so in some certain type of way, we feel like we're owed to do that for everyone else.
Right.
Like I find myself sometimes doing that, like, going and extending beyond what I should be extending, and then thinking sometimes putting others first before myself. And so, and when we act in this selfish way, then we're, it's seen as like, you need to think about others. And it's like, well, what about me? And like you said, because in the end, if I don't think about me, then I'm gone.
Right.
And so then what happens?
Exactly. And then, we have to look at, the physical health of Black women.
Right.
And, just really quick, a personal note, my mom died in her 40s, very young. And it's like, she did a lot for me and my sister. I love her. Like, I still love her more than anything in this world. And she did a lot for everyone. And so it's almost like she sacrificed herself for the betterment of everyone. And I think this year, COVID, with everything going on, you see more Black women saying self-help. It's important that we care for ourselves. But this is very new. And if you speak to the wrong persons, like these modern women,
right,
they're up here trying to be great. We don't have time for that. So like, it is this thing where since the beginning of time, we're supposed to be the caregivers because we are birthing the world.
Right.
We are then supposed to care for the world.
Exactly.
But who cares for us except other women who sees us? Like Black women, we see each other.
Right.
And so we form the circle, just like, Claudette's mother and the grandmother of Sebastian. We have to form the circle of protection for ourselves because sometimes we don't get it and we're trying to control the world, time, and everything else. But look, we are all here.
And it's really important that young girls are getting that nurturing of taking care of themselves, of being able to mourn, of being able to be young, of being able to enjoy life. Because if they grow up so fast, they don't get that, once they become an adult, sometimes they become jaded, or something, worse could go wrong. And so it's like we have to be sure to even protect, to make sure that kids get to be kids. Like going back to our early conversation, kids just need to be kids.
Yes.
They need to enjoy life. They need to have fun and should not be forced to have to take care of people before it is their time to really.
Right, exactly.
And so I think it's important that there is a level of protection that is given toward, and I mean specifically towards Black young girls. Definitely so.
That's definitely true. And even when you see when Claudette, she had to comfort her mother. You remember when her mother was like, I'm not even hungry. She was watching the news and she was being traumatized by the news and the fact that her son died.
Right.
And Claudette came and was like, you can lay your head on my lap. Like, I got you. At that point, she started to grow up.
Yeah.
She was, it's funny, not funny, but it's interesting because the death of her brother made her become older.
Right.
Like her future was not important anymore. It was about the past. And she's now grown. She has become a grown woman at this point.
Yeah.
Because she did not have this youthfulness she once had. Now even her George for her work became so purpose driven that it was no longer entertaining.
Right. It was no longer fun.
It was not fun anymore. She was like, okay, we gotta get this done. I'm stressed out because I'm not doing this for me. It's not for me going to this expo. It's now like a matter of life and death, and it's on my shoulders. I have to change this. And even at that one point when Calvin was like, leave well enough alone, like don't do anything else. She was like, you don't understand, I can't. And that speaks to what you're saying too, how we are so used to doing it, it's hard to stop.
Right. Yeah.
Like, how you gonna tell us to rest and how you gonna tell us to relax and not be everything? This is what we are. We are supposed to be everything.
Which makes me think about that book you got there right behind you. But some of us are brave. It's yeah.
All the women are white, all the Blacks are men, but some of us are brave. And this is very important. It's by Hull, Scott, and Smith, because it speaks about, again, it's about Black feminist studies, of course, but it speaks about the experiences of Black women.
Right.
And the fact that when we think of the Black community, we tend to take a cisgendered heterosexual perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not looking at, we don't really give a lot of focus to Black women who are intersectionally oppressed.
Right.
You think about womanhood, we think about woman, like in the title, you think about white women. And you can't separate the two for Black women.
Mm-mm.
So we have the oppression of being Black, but you also have the oppression of being a woman. And then you have this invisibility of being both.
Exactly. Yep.
And then we think about Black trans women,
Mm-hmm.
like the additional invisibility. We think about Black women, LGBTQ, any level, it just gets further invisible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so the stresses of it are invisible. And then you think that the stress of being a Black woman, for example, is you start to have these conversations like, well, you're supposed to do that.
Right. Right.
You're
It's
supposed
expected of you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like what you mean? You remember good time? You like Good Times?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, about to say. Because I would say Good Times was very interesting. So you remember, I guess it's not just a Good Times when he said the role of the woman is in the kitchen and the bedroom.
Yeah.
And then Florida, who was amazing. She was like, I wasn't pulled from your foot, I was pulled from your rib.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, from your partner, don't play games. And the thing is, that was back in the 70s.
The 70s, yeah.
70s. And we're still having that conversation today. Like, hello. Can we be equal? Can you look at our struggles too, as in two?
Right.
As in we do struggle, as in why do we have to be in this specific space? As in, can we also have time for ourselves so that we can advance ourselves?
Right.
Like, what is the problem? Even then it goes back to the conversation on being a doctor.
Right.
It's like, yeah, we're Black women doctors. Like, we can do something. Mm-hmm. It's okay. We can be smart. We don't have to just be in the kitchen in the bedroom.
Right.
Like, there are also chefs for that too. Just want to throw it out there.
So yes. Well, so yeah. So any closing thoughts on See You Yesterday? What when you look at the whole grand scheme of things? So I take it you still your mind isn't changed. You don't need to go back to the past. No time traveling for you, huh?
No time traveling. My thing is the biggest thing for me is a takeaway as a Black girl. When you are a Black girl, it's important that you know that you do have a future ahead. And I don't know how to explain this, but it's just so much. There are no final words. There's more, because even at the end, how she constantly goes to the past, and she's still going back. She's like, I want to save everybody. At some point, I understand the need to save, but also you have to save yourself.
Yep.
And I think that was the biggest takeaway for me. As a Black girl, she's so young. Think about your future. Unfortunately, her brother's life was cut short. And we already know about the structural racism as well as police brutality, all these different things that, has led to his death. And it was unjust because he was pulling a phone out of his pocket.
Right.
But unfortunately, it really shows how a lot of times Black people's lives stop short when that happened.
Yeah.
And we become so focused on that particular situation, which is part of grieving too.
It is.
It's hard to move out of that. But the biggest takeaway for me would be, it's still important that we focus on our future, that we don't get caught up in the past, and that we take the time to mourn, which is part of self-care.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Piggyback on that, we have to look towards the future.
Right.
I live for the future. I understand the past. I understand that I'm in the present, but I live for the future.
Right.
And, watching See You Yesterday, it has a very kind of open-ending sense of hope.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the midst of the trauma, even in the midst of the brutality, even in the midst of the death,
right,
there is, I still have to find some semblance of hope.
Right.
And, when I talk to my students about this, it's hard for them. They're like, the ending. I'm like, I know, but there's still like that openness is kind of a relief in the sense of like, we can still change.
Right.
Change the past, but we can change and impact what's going to be for the future. So,
right.
See You Yesterday definitely does that job. I totally recommend this for, all kids, especially those who are into STEM. I said, we teach on the collegiate level. So I definitely recommend it in that classroom, K through 12. It's just a very important film. and also discuss it, to discuss
Right,
it
right,
afterward.
right.
So yeah, it's just one of those where I hope that it continues to stay on Netflix for more people to be able to watch it and engage with it. And I hope you all got something from us, once again, as we kind of break down these imaginaries, these Black future imaginaries in these television and films.
Yes. Hope you really enjoy it. And next movie we'll be talking about is
Harlem Nights.
I'm
Yeah.
really
I know
excited.
y'all probably thinking, how does this fit in the Black imaginary? Well,
It
if
does.
you tune in, you'll see how that works out. So,
Yes. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you participating with us or being a part of our podcast today. And we look forward to talking with you next time.
yes. And remember, the past is a living thing. The present prepares us for the present prepares for us, and the future is ours. See you next time on Conversations with Beloved and Kindred.